Okay, cool. All right, here we go. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Alliance Group podcast. And we have a very special guest all the way from Delaware, a grizzled veteran of Alliance Group and Pike Creek Financial, Mr. John Nelson. John, what's up, man? Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Sam. How you doing, buddy?
Good, man. I'm doing great. We are stoked to have you in. Of course, I talked about, the grizzled old veteran. I said that kind of half jokingly because as we found out, we were kind of doing the math this morning, John, you have been doing this for half of your life now.
Yeah.
44 years old, right?
Yeah, been doing it for 22. So
you came into the business in, we figured it was 2002. And you have been doing, you are one of the best in the country at mortgage protection. You've been specializing in that. You have sold literally, thousands of leads, millions of dollars of premium over your 22 years plus at Alliance Group and Pike Creek. So we're going to have a conversation about that. I want to kind of pick your brain, let our agents kind of get, some insight from somebody who has so much experience, but really glad to have you. So thanks for coming up and joining us.
Yep, absolutely. And we get to go see the Kentucky-Georgia game tonight.
Exactly. So we kind of work it in this podcast. Obviously, John Nelson is, he's got blue running through his veins. He's a huge Kentucky fan. We, of course, at Alliance Group are Georgia fans. They face off in Athens tonight, and we will be there on the hard court. Looking forward to seeing the Bulldogs take down those old Wildcats.
Yeah, we'll see.
We'll see. So 22 years since 2002. I want to kind of go all the way back and start, John. So much has changed in 22 years. You came in as a young 20-something-year-old in the life insurance industry, working with Frank Tomazine, who you met Frank. You said that Frank changed your diapers.
Well, Karen did, yeah, but
Frank wouldn't be changing a diaper.
Yeah. No, but they've known me, since I was born, and he's just been somebody that's been constantly in my ear as a young kid telling me that this is what he thinks I should do when I get older.
Yeah.
And I finally listened to him.
So your dad coached Frank, like in sports and stuff, and they were in church?
Yeah, they were there. My mom and dad were, the youth pastors for Frank and Karen when they were in high school and middle school and stuff like that. So
that's so crazy.
It's kind of wild. And there's some relation way down the line on Karen's side and my mom's side.
Right.
So, but way down the line.
That's incredible, man. That's so Frank's been in your ear. He obviously saw some talent in you. So 22 years old ish, you get your life license, you start selling it immediately because you are with Frank Tomazine, who's a giant in his industry. He's incredible at what he does. He's taught so many agents over the years how to be excellent and world-class at what they do. So you've been basically Frank's right hand for so long there at Pike Creek. So when you first come into the industry, I mean, so much has changed. Let's go back in time and talk about what was different then as opposed to now, starting with National Life was called what at the time? The Independent Channel?
It was the Independent Channel, and it was still National Life and Life of the Southwest.
Right.
But they called the channel basically Life Event Advantage.
Life Event Advantage rolls right off the tongue.
Yeah.
And you were out there selling Life Event Advantage products.
Yeah.
We've talked about this before. Just again talking about things that were different 22 years ago. Oral swabs.
Oh yeah, the oral fluids. We'd have to do them ourselves, and
so explain for our viewers who don't know what an oral fluid is. That used to be something where, now we have parameds, right? But there used to be something below parameds where you didn't quite have to do a paramed, but you did have to do an oral swab. What was that like?
So think of it as today where you have a product where maybe it doesn't need any fluids or a non-med. Mm-hmm. It wasn't a non-med back then. It was an oral fluid product.
Okay, good news. You don't have to do a paramed and have a nurse, but I do have to get something from you.
And so we'd have these little kits that we would keep with us, and it basically looked almost like a weird-looking toothbrush.
Uh-huh.
And the client would have to put it in their mouth, swirl it around, and then we'd have to put it in this tube, right? We felt like kind of like a little mini nurse.
Yeah, right.
Taking this test tube and putting it in, and then we'd
Sealing
have to mail
it with
it off.
Sticker.
Yep, and have to write all the dates and the code numbers and everything on there.
Of course, it was only paper apps back then. This was, I talk about it like it's, hundreds of years ago. But back in the day, they didn't even have electronic applications, paper applications, which is something that, yes, everyone had to do them 22 years ago. You still prefer paper apps, and we are going to get into that. But just in general, John, like over 22 years, what has changed? What has stayed the same since you started to where we are now? I mean,
I would say the biggest things are, the leads have changed a little bit in the sense that the areas and how many leads we can get in areas based on how mortgages are and different things like that. I mean, I can remember back then Frank and I would mail in just one county, and we'd get enough leads to cover 5 or 6 people out of that one county. Now, I have to mail 5 or 6 counties just to get enough leads for myself.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's been a little bit of a difference. But I mean, for somebody, coming in, even what I would say has been the same is the track that you run on. And, don't reinvent the wheel on something that works. And so although there's been subtle changes and things that we've had to make over the years, the biggest thing is just doing the leads the proper way. And all the agents that tried to reinvent the wheel along the way were the ones that never made it. The ones that kind of did it the right way and stuck to the track, they're the ones that made it. So
it's really interesting to think about, like, yes, we have like social media now. We have agents that are out there, doing amazing things on Instagram, the marketing, digital marketing, social marketing, social media marketing, all that stuff. But there is also something to be said for doing things the right way, doing things the way that work, and adding in some of these things to give yourself an advantage over the years, but also just what you've proven over the years is that, because you've been consistent, John. I mean, you put up the numbers every single year in, year out. Doing the things that work, and like you said, there's something to be said for not trying to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
So speaking of some of that. You've obviously built a career on marketing and selling mortgage protection, millions and millions of dollars of premium over your career. So let's talk for agents who don't know what mortgage protection is. We do have some agents. Obviously, mortgage protection has been something that Alliance Group was built on mortgage protection. Right. Alliance Group started as a mortgage protection shop way back with Jerry Stratton, with Frank Tomazine, with a lot of our founding MGAs. We started as a group that was
that's
buy
all
leads.
It was.
Yep, that's all it was. You buy leads for people who just bought a home. You send them a piece of mail that says, "Hey, there's this thing called a mortgage protection plan for your new home. Are you interested?" They fill out a form. They send it back to you. That's a lead, right? What is mortgage protection for those of you for those of our viewers who might not know what mortgage protection is?
I think it's pretty simple. It's a product that protects somebody's mortgage in the event that they pass away, or at least that's what the old definition was. With when Living Benefits hit the scene and we created this channel all those years ago, it became something that if you die too soon, the mortgage protection plan is still there, which is the old school concept.
Right.
But now if you live too long with an illness, or injury, something happens, you can still protect your home and you won't lose your home. And I think the definition, most people, when I ask them what their definition of mortgage protection is,
right.
And I typically say this to clients, and I'll ask them, I say, well, what's your definition of mortgage protection? And the most common answer I get is, well, if something happens to me, my home gets paid off. And that's a pretty common thing.
Yep.
But I disagree with that definition. That's not my definition. My definition is that if something were to happen to you, that you don't lose your home. So losing it and paying it off are two different things.
Right.
And sometimes, depending on a client's financial situation, maybe their health, those things will obviously determine premium.
Right.
And so I want to always make sure that I can give somebody a plan that will ensure that they don't lose their home in the event of something happening, maybe not be able to quite pay it off, but they're not going to be thrown out on the street because of an event.
So ideally, if money was not an object, mortgage protection would be, I have a $500,000 mortgage for 30 years. I get a 30-year term policy for $500,000 of protection, ideally. And like you said, if I can't afford that, then you might be able to put $300,000 in, but then at least you're still covering a little bit. But let's just go back to the ideal situation. $500,000 mortgage, 30-year term or 30-year mortgage. I get a $500,000 30-year term policy to cover that, so that now I'm covered with a $500,000 policy. If I die, my home is completely paid off. I can use that money to pay off my entire home, and then my family, my house remains a home for my family forever. But now with living benefits, if I get sick, I'm not dead, so I didn't get the full death benefit, but I can have access to money that will help me make my mortgage payments while I'm sick and I'm out of work. So like you said,
Absolutely.
you don't lose the home.
Right.
Right? So a lot of agents, John, don't. So what we're basically doing with mortgage protection is we're selling what life insurance does, not what it is. You're not saying I'm here to sell you a life insurance policy, because a lot of people are like, I don't need another life insurance policy, or I don't need I don't want to buy life insurance. But this mortgage protection thing, that sounds like something that's very useful. They don't realize it's the same thing, right?
And it goes even further than that, not just with the living benefits, but to kind of go back to what you said, to make sure they don't lose their home in that situation where the guy can't afford the $500,000, can only afford $3. I always give the client an option. I say, well, if in fact, say you're the client, Sam, you pass away, your wife now has $300,000. She has a couple things she can do with it. She can make the mortgage payments with that $300,000 in the bank for several years, make sure she's still in the home, or she can take that $300,000, apply it to the balance of the mortgage, refinance a smaller amount, spread it back out over 30 years, and have a manageable payment. Again,
absolutely. Still
coming back to not losing the home. So it's not just the living benefits that come into that concept. It can be the death benefit too.
Right.
And that's why, when I sit down with clients, not to get ahead, but when I sit down with clients, I'm always asking all these extra questions to kind of find out what their game plan is with the mortgage. Because just because somebody has a $500,000 mortgage for 30 years, that's not always what that's not the plan I always put them in. Even if they can afford to do that.
Right.
It might not be what their game plan is.
Right.
So I always try to find that stuff out and gear it towards what they're trying to do.
Absolutely. And the good thing we love about mortgage protection going back is that it spells out the value of what the life insurance does. Because if you just said, hey, yeah, I'll sell you a $500,000 life insurance policy, they'll be like, that's a lot of money. Like that's leaving my wife with maybe more money than she's going to need. But if you say, I want to write you a mortgage protection plan for your specific mortgage. I see here that you have $500,000 with X bank, on a 30-year mortgage. Now they're seeing it as, okay, this is something I see what I'm going to get from this if I pay into it. And it's spelling out that value, I think, that makes mortgage protection such a powerful concept. And like you're kind of alluding to there, you can use mortgage protection as an agent to get your foot in the door, sell them something that they know that they need, and then ask more questions to uncover other pains that you might be able to help them with.
Exactly. Yeah. Especially for new agents, it's a great way to start building up a clientele. You come into the business and you're just working referrals or, close friends and family, different things like that. It's going to be harder to get a bunch of clients, right away. This is a way that you can get your foot in the door, like you said, build a clientele. And again, with leads, you pay for that lead one time.
Yeah.
Well, you know how many times I've made sales and helped families along the way just from that one lead that's been multiple, times back in the house, back in the door. So, they become that client for 20, 30 years, whatever it's going to be, whatever mortgage protection plan you're putting them with. But then you follow up with those clients and like you said, there's more things that you can help them with.
Exactly.
Because we're not a one-stop shop.
Yep. So you've obviously, over your course of your 22 years selling, thousands and thousands of mortgage protection policies, you've made, I'd estimate you've made tens of thousands of calls on leads. You've got to have this thing down. It's got to be, you could probably do it in your sleep. So just so that people can see, you've set so many appointments, called so many leads. I want to do a little bit of a role play here and kind of get some insight for our viewers as to how you go about calling a lead and saying, hey, you don't know me from Adam, but I'm calling for this reason, and kind of guide them through to set that appointment. So let's give this a shot here. So Let's say that I'm a client. You're calling me. Ring, ring, ring. Hello.
Hey, is Sam available?
Yes, this is he. Who's this?
Hey, Sam, this is John Nelson with Pike Creek Financial Group. I'm calling about the mortgage protection plan that you just recently inquired about. And I just needed to gather some additional information from you and verify a couple things.
Mortgage protection plan. I'm not remembering.
Yeah, you filled out the information and sent it back in the mail. Put down your date of birth.
Oh, it was a form.
Yes.
Yeah,
form,
I was talking about my mortgage. Yeah, I put like my name and my birth date and my phone number. Yep. Okay, so this is what you're calling about.
Yes.
All right.
So I just need to verify a couple things and ask you a few other questions just to make sure that you guys can qualify for the plan.
Okay.
I see here that you have a mortgage balance of 300,000 for 30 years. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, good. I've got down that your date of birth is 1/7/1980. Is that accurate?
Yep.
Good. You put down that you didn't use any nicotine or tobacco products,
Yeah.
non-smoker.
Yep. You're correct. I remember this now. I remember
Yep.
filling this out. Okay.
And I got that your height and weight is 5'7", 150 pounds. Is that accurate?
Absolutely.
Okay. And then if there's a spouse, we'll kind of pause for a second. If there's a spouse, I would go through that same concept.
Okay.
And ask, the information about the spouse.
Okay. So you're qualifying this client, and what you did just there, you reminded me. Oh yeah, I remember filling this out.
Yeah, I'm helping them remember and verifying that I know things about them, things that they have already told me.
You are official. You're not some random spam, because I'm sure we all get the spam calls these days. So people's shields are up. So you're bringing those shields out. I did fill this out. I did ask for this phone call.
Exactly. And so from there, then I basically just go into asking them some qualifying questions because I want to know, more information about them. So we'll just kind of pick back
So
up.
if I'm had 3 heart attacks and been through cancer twice and love to use heroin, you're probably not going to want to spend time coming by my house and talking about this. So now you're going to qualify me and ask a few questions.
Yeah. So from there, I would just basically say, okay, Sam. So in the last 10 years, have you had any surgeries or any kind of major hospitalizations for anything?
No, I had like a kidney stone like 2 years ago. I don't know if that matters, but
Nope.
it all resolved.
No, and I'll take my notes and then okay, so no heart attacks, no strokes, no cancers, no diabetes, nothing like that, correct?
Nope, none of that.
Okay, good. So I kind of take it a step further there because sometimes people don't associate some of those things with a surgery or hospitalization. If you had a stroke, even though you were in the hospital, you may not have had a surgery from it. So
Right.
They kind of just forget
and people
about it.
love to minimize their own health
Right,
issues.
exactly.
Like, it was no big deal, small
Right.
stroke,
Right, because
I learned how
somebody-
to walk again, a month later, it was fine.
Somebody, I see it all the time. Clients will get a couple stents put in, and they'll be like, "Yeah, my doctor says my heart's working like a 15-year-old's now." Like,
Well, not really.
Good for your doctor.
Right.
So I'll ask those questions, and then from there, and again, I'm writing all this stuff down. From there, I'll basically say to them, are you under the care of a doctor for any reason or taking any type of medications at this time, vitamin supplements, anything that you're on?
I take a high blood pressure medication, cholesterol. I take vitamin D and a supplement for vitamin C.
Okay, great. So if somebody says something about blood pressure, I'm going to kind of take this a step further just to help agents with underwriting. And one of the things you may or may not know, to kind of pause for a second, is depending on how many medications a client is on for blood pressure could determine with some companies how the living benefits play out. So you kind of want to know that information.
Right.
So I would take a step further and say, how many medications for blood pressure are you on?
Just one.
Just one, so we're good. But and I would write those things down. But if they told me multiple, that could also then become an issue.
Gotcha.
But if it's just one, that's good.
Okay.
And again, when I'm doing that, I'm asking about the husband and the wife.
Right,
if
of course.
there's two. So I'm getting all that information. So I've got everything
Well,
I
what
need.
you're basically doing here is, for our viewers here, is he's not starting to underwrite them necessarily, although you are taking these notes so that you know them when you sit. But you're asking enough questions to be like, basically, is it worth my time to come out and see you, or are you going to be a decline right off the bat?
Yeah, I'm qualifying them to make sure that I can do something for them.
Right.
And sometimes you're going to get more things, and in the back of my mind, I'm pre-underwriting them in my head to make sure. And again, that stuff comes with time,
comes with experience. Yep.
You're not gonna know, and there will be those times where even I don't know. So sometimes I might, instead of setting the appointment, actually, I don't typically do that. What I do is I'll still set the appointment so I have it, but say to them, I need to verify a couple things with an underwriter.
Right.
That way the appointment's already in place. And then if I'm good, I'm good.
And if
if
you need
not,
to cancel it,
then I just call them back and let them know.
Heard from the underwriter, and it doesn't look like we're able to do anything.
Right.
Okay, that's awesome. So now let's move on. Let's say that you've qualified, you're good. Tricky part, and something that is a skill that people really have to learn, is how to book the appointment. Like, how do I set the appointment? Because even though, and you know this, John, better than anybody, even though I filled something out, and even though I sent it in, and even though you called and I'm talking to you, for some reason I'm still going to be resistant
Right.
to meeting with
Sure.
you. I don't know why. It's human nature, but you still have to kind of pin me down.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of times agents will just say, well, at this point I got this information. I'd like to meet with you. When's good for you? And when you do that, you open up, Pandora's box essentially, because you don't know what they're going to say next.
Right. You need to really guide them.
Right. So in this situation, what you want to do is, I don't want to use the word trap, but you want them to give you answers that they can't get back out of.
Right.
Okay. So you want to set them up for the answers that you can then control the conversation and how the appointment or what time the appointment would be. So I'll basically say at that point to say, okay, Sam, I've got all the information I need.
Excellent.
What I'd like to do now is put some options together for you, and I want to make it sound like, hey, they've got options here.
Right.
I want to put some options together for you. I deal with multiple insurance companies to try to find you the best rates, most benefits, and to put a plan together for you. So, what typically works best for you, days or evenings?
Evenings for sure.
Evenings. Okay. And so what I did there is I've pinpointed now that he told me that evenings work good. So now when I talk to him about evenings, he can't get out of that.
Right. I can't say, actually, no, I don't evenings aren't good for me. Like,
Right.
no, I just told you. And you eliminated, by the way, all the morning,
Right.
all the noon,
Right.
all the early afternoon. Now we're in evenings.
Right. And so, but I'll take that a step further because clients have different definitions of evening. So I'll say early in the evening or later in the evening, and
For
then,
me, it's later in the evening.
right. And so then I'll say, okay, so typically you're home by 6.
6:30, yeah, 6:30ish usually.
Okay, so they just told me that 6:30 or after they're basically available. And so what I do is I try to have appointments at 6 and then a 7:30. I try to have them an hour and a half apart. And so, especially if I have drive time in between. But then I know now that this is going to be a 7:30 time slot. I've eliminated my 6 o'clock time slot.
Yep.
So then I jump right in and say, okay, Sam, I've got Wednesday next week. I've got Wednesday available at 7:30. How does that work for you?
Ooh, Wednesday. That's the one night that week that is not going to work for me. I've got baseball practice with my kid.
Okay, no problem. So is that a consistent thing on Wednesday, or
Wednesday,
is that just this
yeah,
Wednesday?
they're always going to practice Mondays and Wednesdays, but usually Thursdays, Fridays are good.
Okay. So then now they've told me a day that's good. Okay, so it brought that into play, and so if those days work for me, then I'll go ahead and schedule it. If not, I'll say okay. I might say, well, how does Tuesday work? Instead of the Wednesday,
Right.
Or if they give me those answers.
So
then,
basically, what you've done is you've led me, and I know you don't want to use the word trap, but you kind of have to. You have to trap these
Right.
guys sometimes because they'll try to look for a way out. So you've slowly gotten me and painted me into a corner where now I basically told you, Thursdays at 7:30 or Tuesdays at 7:30 is going to be when I'm good,
Right.
and then you book the appointment. One thing that you said, John, is you do not. You don't call to confirm the appointment. Why is that?
I don't, because again, it comes back to what you just said. You give a client an out, or you do something like that, they're going to take it most of the time. Just like when you make a phone call, you notice when you answer the phone, a lot of times a natural thing for somebody to say is, "Hey, Sam, this is John. I'm calling with such and such. Do you have a few minutes?"
No.
And you ask that question, and then people are always going to say, if they don't want to talk to you.
Actually, I'm really busy right now.
Right. Yeah, they don't want to talk. So I never gave you that option. I
right
just
into
went
it.
right into it and said, "This is why I'm calling. Here's what I need from you." And it got
You asked for this, by the way.
Yeah, you've got now the clients think, okay, I got to answer these questions.
Yep.
Instead of, I don't have time to talk.
And you never call to confirm because you said something earlier when we were talking about it. You're like, if I ever didn't really want to go to an appointment if something came up, I would call to confirm.
Yeah, it was funny. Frank and I always had this rule of thumb. We'd get to the end of our week and we'd have enough production in, or we just were tired and just wanted to. If we always said if we didn't want to go on an appointment, call to confirm it, because 9 times out of 10 they would cancel.
The client will be like, "Oh, I'm glad you called. I actually don't want to talk to you at all today."
But you know how many times I can say this? Hundreds of times over the years where I've shown up, knocked on a client's door, they come to the door, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I totally forgot you were coming. I would have canceled this if you called before."
But now
you're here. Come on in.
Yep.
And honestly, a lot of those have been some of the best sales over the years.
Wow.
But those clients would have probably canceled, and maybe I would have never met with them again
because something
had I
super
called to
minor
confirm.
came up, right? Something super minor, like so
Or they just weren't in the mood at that point, or
Right.
they just like a lot of times I just think they didn't remember.
Right.
But now that you gave them the opportunity to remember, they're like, well, I've got other things I can do.
Exactly.
Let me get out of
But
this.
when you're on their doorstep, knocking on their door, they're like, "Oh, well, you're here now. I'm not going to send you away. This is my fault. Come on in.
Yeah.
Let's get this over with."
And I know a lot of people think that's some of the old school thinking with the Zooms and the things that are available to us today, but it's easy for somebody not to show up for a Zoom because they're just looking at an email. When you're on somebody's doorstep, it's harder to turn you away, especially when they made an appointment with you and now they feel bad.
It goes back to what we were talking about, where sticking with what works, what classically is always going to work. I mean, no matter how far we get into the digital age and Zooms and virtual appointments and things like that, there's never going to be any more effective way or higher percentage of selling a policy than by meeting somebody in person at their home.
Yeah.
You truly believe that?
I do believe that, and I use that to my advantage because I make it a point. In fact, I've had agents that have told me, in the last couple of years, selling in person, doing mortgage protection in person just doesn't work anymore. And I'm like, yeah, watch. I'll show you.
Watch me.
Yeah, I'll make a call in front of you, and I'll go set the appointment, and I'll go write it. And 90% of the mortgage protection sales that I do are in person still today. And I also let and there's times where you might have already bought a policy from a guy that did a Zoom with you.
Yep.
And I still can get in the door because I say, well, let's at least compare. Let me come meet with you. And I always let the client know. And I will never downplay or ridicule or say anything negative about another agent. But I just tell them about what I'm here for and what I do and say, look, I don't know that other agent, but I'm here. When you need a claim, when you need help, I'm here. I can come over.
I live in your neighborhood.
Yeah, I can come see you.
Yeah.
I don't know where that other person may have called from. You don't know where they may have called from. So that's one of the differences. And I think people still like that personal touch. And there's times, where, Frank's down in Florida, and I was telling you this earlier, Frank, he'll call an existing client of his, and that client doesn't even want to do stuff over the phone because they just want that personal touch. And so I'll go out and visit with them, and just kind of check up with them. And a lot of times it's to do more business.
I think, I think that, again, as the Zoom culture increases, I think it actually, because less people are offering in-person stuff. It started with COVID where you couldn't do in-person stuff. And then a lot of agents who preferred in-person stuff discovered Zoom appointments and how easy they are. Like, I don't have to put on pants. I could make a sale, and and clients also got kind of used to that thing. But I think that what's happened is it's starting to kind of come back around to the point where if you are doing in-person business, you stand out that much more as like, wow, this person really cares. Like, no one does this stuff anymore. Nobody makes house calls. And so it really, as you were saying, it kind of makes you stand out in their minds. It also, you're offering now something that their current agent maybe didn't. Like, they've never met that guy in person. That guy might be calling from Wisconsin, right?
And sometimes it feels no different to them than if they just go on, a select quote or something and buy a policy online. It's kind of that same feel.
Yeah.
And they really don't know what they bought. They're not getting a policy delivered to them and going through the policy.
Right.
So all that stuff, matters too. And where it also matters is you're building that relationship, and that relationship then turns into more business with that client.
Because I think that's
it's harder to get that.
A quick hit might be available on Zoom, a quick sale, but you haven't built any relationship there, right? So when it comes to down the road, when it's time to convert, you have to remind them who the hell you are, right? When you reach out to them, if you're doing that business on Zoom. Now, I'm not saying for those agents that do Zoom, not necessarily this is the case every time. Maybe people do a really good job at establishing a good rapport over Zoom. I'm sure they do. But again, it kind of goes back to what you're kind of saying, which is like there is no substitution for sitting knee to knee with somebody in their living room, somebody in your community, which is something that you, Frank, and Pike Creek, in general, has done just an excellent job of doing throughout the years. Let's actually talk about the sit now, which is something that you've obviously mastered as well. Sitting for an appointment. I mean, this is something that you really have to learn with experience. You learn a lot of lessons through experience. Very few agents are going to be good at it right off the bat. Let's actually start with this. Do you remember your first few sits with live clients solo by yourself?
Oh man,
any interesting stories?
I remember the really bad ones.
Yeah,
like
that's what I want to hear about.
Yeah.
That's what
not really the good ones, but some of the
the scarring events.
Well, yeah, the houses you walk into sometimes are just bad. I'll tell a quick story, and I'm going to get National Life involved here because we were having some trouble with underwriting, years back. And I won't say any names, but this person's no longer an underwriter there.
Yeah, please don't.
But we were basically trying to explain, you guys have no idea what it's like in the field. We're out trying to make these sales, feed our families, do these types of things. Like, when we're asking for a business decision or why we put somebody in there's reasons, right? We're trying to do everything we can too. And I get their side of it too.
Yeah.
They have to underwrite properly.
Yep.
Problem is it was just black and white. It was like so by the book. There was no gray.
Right.
And I'm like, we just got to operate a little bit in the gray for some of these cases. Like there has to be that. So we talked the underwriter. I said, well, why don't you come see what it's really like in the field and see what we deal with every day. You've actually come and sat with me in the field.
I have. We were going to get into that.
Yeah. So so this underwriter agreed, and she came in.
No way.
And it was the head of underwriting at this point, at this time. And I wanted, believe it or not, and I hate to say this, but I wanted to have the worst day of my career in this business. I didn't want to make sales.
Like, look how hard this is. Look what I'm doing.
I wanted to see the worst of the worst. It ended up being a blend of both, but the first appointment was the best appointment in the worst way. So we show up to this, and I'll paint the picture. It was so bad that if I was alone, I wouldn't even have knocked on the door. Like
really?
Just pulling up to the house. I wouldn't have knocked on the door. I would have left. I mean, I would have been nice and called the client. Well, we pulled up. There was mattresses all over the yard.
Uh-huh.
There was all kinds of animal feces and everything everywhere.
Was there a pit bull chained to a?
No, there was no dogs outside, but there was probably maybe 30 cats running around.
Uh-huh.
And I could see her face as we're pulling up, and she's like, and I'm like, come on, we got to go in.
Let's go.
Like, you never know.
This is what the job is.
And so we had to, it was like a minefield to get up there. We were like walking and on the walkway, not just like through the grass. Right. And I said, I'm going to take my sweet old time on this appointment. Like in my head, I'm saying all these things. And so we knock on the door, and the lady comes to the door and opens it up, and it's all you could. This was the time where we needed COVID masks. Yeah. Like it was that bad in there.
Oh my God.
So we walk in, and there was nowhere to sit. Again, multiple mattresses. I don't know what this lady's obsession with was mattresses, but they were everywhere in the house. Just mattresses with no sheets on them, just everywhere. And there was really nowhere to sit. The table was covered with dog food, cat food.
Oh my gosh.
Like just stuff. Not like in a bag, like just out everywhere. It was like the cats and the animals could just run free and eat wherever they wanted. And so I'm like, all right, well, let's try to sit down here. I think I even had to stand. I made her sit. I'm like, you sit. And we went through this appointment, and I did everything like I would normally. I knew there was nothing coming of this. This lady probably couldn't afford it. And there was, it just was, I don't even know if she would have got approved at this point because of her lifestyle.
Right.
But we got back in the car, and she looked at me, and I think that one appointment completely changed her perspective. Mm-hmm. And she's like, okay, I think I understand now.
I see what you guys go through.
Yeah, and I'm like, that's
how hard you work to find these apps that you send in to us.
Yeah.
Right.
And I told her, I was honest with her when we got it, and I said, honestly, if you weren't with me today, I probably wouldn't have gone into that.
You're like, honestly, that one was really bad.
But
I'm glad it was the first one.
Yeah. I wanted you to see, and again, they're not all like that, but there are times where you're in a house and sometimes you feel unsafe.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're in neighborhoods, like the cities, things like that.
Yeah.
But believe it or not, a lot of those clients, they're some of the best clients.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
it's pretty incredible. So, I actually have gone with you on a ride along as well. This was many years back. This is probably close to 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Went with you. I think we did 3 appointments. You sold them all. It was amazing to watch you do your thing. I was along as your field trainer. That's how you introduced me, or no, the field trainee.
Yeah.
That's how you introduced me. And I was just sitting there just watching John Nelson do what he did. And it was really impressive. And again, that was 10 years ago. You got 10 more years of seasoning since then. But let's talk a little bit about this sit, and just for an agent that's watching this, a new agent or even an experienced agent who's looking to pick up some tips for what someone like you does when they sit down. What are some things that you're looking for? What are some things that you're looking to establish? What are just some tips that you could give folks for setting the right setting when you walk into a home to make a sale?
Yeah, well, I think as soon as you walk in, it starts with the phone call, obviously, all that stuff, because the client products matter. Don't get me wrong, and we have the best products, I believe, out there. But clients still buy us first, right?
Absolutely.
They really do, because back in the day, and this is how this was telling. Today, it doesn't really matter because you're getting the EFT information on the application. But back in the day, you had to collect a check.
Yeah.
And it was always funny to me that the first time they would really know the company's name that they were buying was when they said, "Well, who do I write the check to?"
Who do I write the check to? Yeah.
So that told you right then and there that they were buying you. They were buying the product.
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
Like they're buying you. They bought whatever you were talking about. They're like, so what is this company anyway? Like,
and sometimes people thought they were writing the check to me.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, that's how much we would get into it. But yeah, so when I sit down and when I walk into a house, it's almost like you kind of become a little bit of a detective as soon as you walk in.
Yeah.
You want to kind of check your surroundings, see what there's something common.
Right.
Find a common ground.
So you're looking on pictures on the wall, trying to get clues for hobbies or kids or
something you can open the door with or kind of relax the situation. And there's going to be times where you don't find any of that stuff. And I always tell agents, don't try to BS your way through that. Like, don't pick something that you really don't know a whole lot about just because it's there.
Right.
Just talk about the weather. Something if you can always find common ground there. Like, just default to that.
Sure.
How this weather's crazy.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You just say something
nice
like that.
Nice weather lately, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's nice or bad.
Right. You can
People
relate.
always talk about the weather.
But so you want to do that, and then as you kind of come in, I think one of the most important things is you want to basically let the client know that. I guess the right word is you're in charge at that point. Like, you're directing this whole appointment, and not them.
You're a pro. You do this every day.
Right. Even though you're in their home, you're kind of taking the lead here. Because a lot of times clients will say, well, here, let's have a seat over here. And they want to put you in the living room or the sitting room at a couch. And you don't want that. The business doesn't get done sitting on a couch. That's where you watch TV.
I've heard,
what I mean?
I've heard Steve Smith, actually, I believe, God rest his soul, wonderful agent
absolutely.
at Pike Creek, just passed away last year. I remember him saying something along the lines of he would always ask for a glass of water. Once he got situated, because he wanted the client to get used to taking direction from him, right?
Absolutely.
And so he would politely, but he would say, actually, do you mind if I get a glass of water? Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And now they're doing it. So it was like these little seeds that he used to plant. So these are the kind of things that you're talking about. You're stepping in, you're taking control. You're saying, actually, not the couch.
We want to sit at the table.
Yeah.
I need to set my laptop up, and because that way you have space, you can work, I'm assuming I'm writing the app.
Right.
I need a space to write.
Yep.
I can't do that on the couch.
Absolutely.
Now, there are times where you walk into homes and you don't have a choice, right?
Right.
There's stuff all
When
over
we
the
talked about
tables.
earlier, right.
But there's times where I have clients move that stuff because if the situation at the couch really isn't comfortable, then I want to I want to make them, and it's kind of like the glass of water.
Yeah.
Well, can we move some of this stuff?
Absolutely.
So we can sit down, and so 9 times out of 10 they'll do that stuff, and then from there you just you go into your appointment, and I don't do any kind of I wouldn't call it a presentation. There's no slideshows. I'm not giving them statistics.
Right.
One of the most important things that I could tell a new agent or an agent doing any kind of sale, whatever you're there to talk to them about, stay with that. Don't deviate from that. Even if there's other things that come up in the conversation, don't go off on, oh, well, I can help you with that too. I can help you with that too. Because if you start to do that, you just create, I need to think about it.
More branches for them
Right.
to think about and to say, I need to pause till I can get my mind around all these different things you're talking
Right.
about. That is something that, necessarily, nothing is gospel in this industry. We've had some people say, oh, well, mortgage protection is a great way to uncover, so maybe to uncover other opportunities. What you're saying very clearly, though, John, which I would agree with, is that if you're there for this and they have expressed interest in this, let's say it's a mortgage protection policy, yes, it's very tempting sometimes to say, you know what, we don't just have to cover the mortgage, we can cover other things.
Right.
And to do that right then, what you're saying, though, is give them what they asked for, get that sale, get them as a client, but take notes on all these other things.
Right.
So if they say, actually, I don't have any life insurance, and what about my income, and what about debt? Some agents might go into, well, let's just write you a full life insurance policy that includes the mortgage. Or if they say, I've got some money sitting in a 401k, or like I saw a video on IUL,
Right.
What do you do about that?
Right.
Making these notes, but you're not, we are here for this reason, to write this mortgage protection thing. Once we're done with this and it's done, we can talk about those other things later, set up another appointment, right?
Well, you know how it's funny, sometimes I'll be sitting there doing mortgage protection, and which we all know is life insurance, right?
Right.
And clients will, and I never deceive a client. If a client asks me what is mortgage protection or what is the product behind it, I always tell them it's life insurance.
Of course, yeah.
But there's times where clients will say to me, well, hey, do you sell life insurance too? And I have to sit there and say, well, yes, that's actually what you're buying.
Yeah,
I said, life insurance is the product behind a lot of concepts. And
Right.
they kind of look at me puzzled. I said, mortgage protection is a concept. It's
Right.
not a product.
Right.
Do you know what a buy-sell agreement is? Do you know what a key man, person policy is?
Tax-free retirement
life
plan.
insurance
Right.
is the product behind all of those
Concepts.
concepts, right?
Yep.
And so that's one of the things that I do. And like you said though earlier, you don't want to deviate from what you're there for,
Right.
even though sometimes it's very tempting. And here's why. Because they may say all these great things, and you may think, "Well, man, I can do all these different things."
So tempting.
Right, but what if they give you, well, there's so many things, let's revene, let's look through all this stuff and then let's get back together. Well, you may never get back together with them.
Exactly.
But if you can get in there, get the mortgage protection done, now they're a client. Now they're going to take your call. Now you're going to be able to get back in. You're going to come back and deliver a policy
Yeah.
or do policy reviews. You have a chance to do all
And
that
you
stuff.
delivered on what you said you were going to deliver on. So
Right.
now they're like, okay, so this guy can deliver. Like, I asked for this, he came, he delivered this.
Yeah, so even when somebody says, well, do you do life insurance too? I don't sit there and say, well, yeah, we can combine and do all. I say, no, let's get this done first, and then we'll have that conversation.
Absolutely.
Because life insurance is different. It's protecting other things.
Yep.
It's protecting, the income, that the client has and different things like that. So
Yeah.
mortgage protection is still a specific thing. Yes, life insurance covers all of it, but I always think clients should have multiple policies, not just one.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about that. So you're out there selling all these mortgage protection policies. You're getting these new clients. You're building your book of business out. At what point, what's your, do you have some sort of timing or structure for how you reach out to existing clients about conversions or about other opportunities?
Yeah, if it's a term client, I think that's the most simple one, right? Because after a year, they're eligible to convert, and so you call them,
Right?
You let them know. And one of the things I like to do with conversions is I don't call it an option; I call it a privilege, because I think I think it resonates better. Like, you
have
now I
conversion
can
privileges.
Yeah,
do you realize that you have conversion privileges
Right.
on that policy?
Because hey, you don't need underwriting again. We've already done the hard work, right? So it's a privilege to be able to convert. It's not an option.
Right.
It is an option, but it's still a privilege.
Yeah, I like
they
that.
Get,
I like
they
that.
get to do that. And so that's the easiest way to kind of call them back. And it's another way to just kind of say, hey, this benefit, this conversion privilege, this benefit that you have is now available to you to use.
Right.
So you can take advantage of that because they have all these other benefits on the policy, like the living benefits and all those types of things, which they can't use unless something happens.
Right.
But this is a way to reach out and tell them, here's a benefit that is now available to use.
right now.
Right,
Yeah,
you can
do
use
it
this.
right now.
And so, yeah, that's one of the good things with UL policies or IULs or any kind of permanent plan. It's more of just reaching out, checking in with you, any life changes, things like that, and you can find out if
doing a policy review, basically.
Right, and sometimes even asking about, hey, are you still good with your beneficiaries? You know how many times that stuff can potentially change?
Absolutely.
And then that can lead into more things like, well, why are we changing? So you want to remove your spouse and put your children on. There's obviously been an event there.
Right.
Let's
How have
figure
your
out
other
why.
needs changed?
Right. You know, do we need to make adjustments to your policy? Do you need more coverage now? You know, that type of a thing.
And I think it's it's something that I've seen throughout the years, and I've even felt it myself. So few agents. Everyone knows the value in theory of policy reviews and reaching out to your current clients, but for some reason, there is this hesitance or feeling that I don't want to call that guy. I already sold him. I want to go find. And Jerry Stratton used to rail on this. He'd be like, why do agents want to go bang their head against the wall trying to find strangers to talk to when they could just call their current clients that already like them, already know them, already trust them. They already have your name in their phones. They know you. Why aren't you doing policy reviews? Why do you think it is that some agents have this hesitancy to call their current clients and follow up and provide that ongoing service?
I actually think I have the answer.
What is it?
Most people have a fear of them canceling.
Right.
They have a fear of, if I remind Sam he's got this policy,
You're like, well, I don't need this policy anymore.
He might not need it anymore. I think that's the biggest reason.
Huh.
The fear of calling them, letting them know, reviewing something, and then all of a sudden they're like, well, I may not need this now, or something changing and it going backwards.
Yeah.
Because it's already there, right? You already know you have it.
Right.
So I just want to find somebody new
but
that can have it.
It doesn't make sense.
But you're right.
From like a dollars and cents perspective.
If you're my client, and this guy over here isn't,
right,
and all of us are sitting together, I got a better chance to sell you something else than to sell the new guy something.
Totally.
100%.
100%. So it's something that I think that, again, it's one of those things that makes you stand out. And all Pike Creek agents do. You guys always do a fantastic job of this, but not just selling you the policy, but servicing you throughout the years. And a lot of agents just don't do that servicing. They sell you something and then they give you a card and say, if you ever need anything, call me. And they might say, I'll be in touch, but they're not in touch. They're out looking for the next new guy, which is important too. Prospecting is also important. Don't get me wrong. But the policy review, we have agents who have built an entire career on building a book of business and servicing that book of business. Jerry Stratton that's how he'll tell you he would always tell you that's how he built his career, was servicing a few really, really good clients as opposed to selling thousands and thousands of new clients and never servicing his current ones.
Yeah, I think they say that you could have, I don't know if these are the most accurate statistics, but it was once said that once you had 500 clients, you wouldn't need any more. You could make a career out of that and
just service them.
Be very successful and service those.
And work off the referrals that you're going to get.
Right, because
if you service an agent, you're going to get referrals.
You'll get more from that, essentially, is what the concept behind that was. Well, I've got well into the thousand, probably a couple thousand clients personally, and then on top of that, what we have at Pike Creek. So we have all kinds of clients that we can call, and service. And so, it's one of those things where you're right. You call these new clients, new leads, different things like that, and try to get referrals, from just friends or whatever. And it's like you're banging your head against the wall when all I got to do is call the guy that already knows me. And And how many times have you heard, I'm sure you've heard it, I know I hear it all the time from clients, say, because they have another policy, let's say, and I'm meeting with them for the first time, and I'll be like, well, tell me about, what kind of policy is it? Well, I don't know. I haven't heard from the guy in years.
Exactly.
Like
I know I checked the box for life insurance, but I don't remember any details about it, and I can't even find the policy. I thought I put it in a drawer, but I don't know, right? So it's
and those are the worst. Ghost policies are the worst. That's what I call them, a ghost policy.
Yeah.
When you don't know what you're doing. And I always, when I'm sitting down, and if I'm going to replace something, or if you're replacing, obviously you need policy numbers and things like that. But even if you're comparing, I always want to know what they have. 9 times out of 10, this has to be accurate. 9 times out of 10, a client will say they have one thing. When they bring the policy to the table, it's different.
Completely different.
Yeah.
Especially if you get into like a permanent policy. And
there's so many, and that's one of the most common ones. Oh, this is whole life and it's term.
Yeah, no, like they hear what they want to hear,
Right.
or like it's pretty crazy.
I always love the ones where clients are under the impression, and again, not throwing anybody under the bus or agents, but clients will say to me, well, this term's good till I'm 95. Well, technically, yes, it is.
Oh, right.
The premium's not going to say
the premium's going to be pretty crazy.
They never
those last
said that.
20 years.
You know, they never said that part. Well, of course they didn't. They just wanted you to know that yes, technically, this term product is good to 95. But let's look at this page here, and then you show them how.
Well, also, in defense of the agents, the illustration says it's good to 95.
Right.
And then you have to know, well, yes, technically it's good to 95. You're just going to be paying insane premiums the last 20 years of that, at the period.
And there's times where I believe that that's not even sometimes the agent's fault. They're just not taught those things.
Exactly.
I think we do. One of the things I love about Alliance is how we train and how we teach agencies and agents the proper things, because I think that's one of the biggest issues in our industry is lack of training.
Lack of training,
don't know what they're doing.
Right. Either lack of training, and there's other groups that just throw a bunch of new recruits against the wall and see what sticks, so to speak. And in other cases, sometimes they're trained to do things
the wrong way. I can tell you, I run into it all the time.
And I think that is something that is very special. It's not just Jerry Stratton, Lee Duncan, John Kraft, that kind of bedrock, but also the founding MGAs.
Sure.
People like Frank Tomazine, and George Chizikas and Steve Peden, and those people that they're good people that truly have ethics and morals and know that is important for the bedrock of a company.
Yeah.
When you're training agents to do the right thing the right way, and results will come. And I think that is something that's very special about not just Alliance Group, but Pike Creek.
It will. And when you do things the wrong way, eventually it will
catch up to
you. And those agents, I always say they're here today, they're going tomorrow. You'll see agents hit leaders bulletins, whether it's this company or other companies, and they'll have this great year, and then they'll kind of be going by the wayside.
Things come out in the wash.
So you just don't know. But yeah, and I think that what you said, people are also being trained the wrong way too. And we see that a lot in the mortgage protection business against other agencies that are out there, where I can't tell you how many times that there's other agents that are basically not impersonating me, but saying they work with me when they don't. You have
to be careful. And I think the lesson is always do the right thing. If you always do the right thing, you're always, crossing your I's, dotting your T's. You definitely do that. You guys are, I wanted to bring this up before we go. You're still doing paper apps.
Oh yeah.
He loves paper apps. And Lee and I always kind of rib him a little bit about it. But as you'll point out, you've done thousands of these things, and you can still get through a paper app in 20 minutes flat.
Yeah, it's not just a speed thing, but it's also a protection thing. And I'm not knocking the companies for doing e-apps. I get it, efficiency matters, all that stuff, and times are different. But e-apps can be dangerous to an agent. Because if there ever is a lawsuit or a claim that comes in, the company goes here, the company separates, the insurance company, the client separates, and then the agent separates. It becomes like this triangle. And one of the things that to me is dangerous about e-apps is, you can't have clients sign different spots on the application. One of the things we do, at Pike Creek and we practice is anywhere on an application where there's a question being asked, the client must sign that page. Because we want not only the insurance companies and the underwriters to know, and I'm telling you right now, this helps with underwriting. And I've had underwriters tell me this, because they know that the client actually saw this page and signed off on it.
Right.
Another thing that we do, because these are common things that come up, with rescissions, is height and weight and the smoking question. So not only is their signature at the bottom of that page, but the client must initial the height and weight and initial the smoking question.
Wow.
Because we want, again, the underwriter and everybody to know, and the client to know that they agree to this.
Yeah. And again, 22 years, it's all about, doing things the right way, doing things the safe way, protecting yourself, protecting your clients.
And I always tell clients more information's better, because there's times, I mean, and you saw me do that on the apps when you were with me.
Yeah.
And I don't remember if this happened that day, but there's times where we get to the end, they've answered all the questions, and and then I tell them, okay, you've got to sign this page now. And then they're like, well, we need to go back to this one. And they want to fix it because now their signature's going on that page. So how often does that happen when they're not signing that page and it just kind of gets let go? And maybe it was something innocent, or we thought was innocent, and then it comes down to, well, I put a claim in the first 2 years, and oopsie, this mattered.
Yep, and they're a little bit more when they know they're initialing every page in your mind. They're paying a little more attention. Their mind might be a little sharper about, okay, wait, what all the medications I'm on? Oh yeah, I forgot one. Because they're initialing. So,
and another thing about paper apps, and I'm going to kind of go back to your Steve Smith scenario when you talked about the glass of water.
Sure.
One of the things that doing a paper app does, it's kind of similar to that concept about the client. With getting a glass of water. When you're doing an e-app, you're just asking questions right away, right? And you're just going through. It's easy for a client to just kind of be like, oh, well, maybe get bored with it or done with it. When a client starts to sign something, they're committed. They're more committed right away. So I do the app from back to front. What I mean by that is I take the disclosures out first, the HIV, the HIPAA, and the ABR forms. And I turn around before we even start asking questions, before I fill their name out on the application, I put that in front of the client and I say, I need you to sign these forms. Now they already feel committed before I even start getting into the meat of the application.
See, this is the really good stuff, man. This is the stuff that we gotta kind of pick your brain for. 22 years of experience, 22 amazing years at Alliance Group, and let's go for 22 more or so. What do you say, John?
I would say at least that, right?
Well, we're going to celebrate your 22 years with a Bulldogs win tonight in Athens over the Kentucky Wildcats on the hard court. It's going to be a lot of fun. This is actually my first UGA basketball game I've ever been to. So.
Oh, I get to experience it with you.
Exactly.
Oh, this is
going to
great.
be fun. So you got to make sure that the Dogs get a win so I enjoy myself. John, dude. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
it's amazing being a partner throughout the years and watching you do what you do. And thanks for sharing your experience with our viewers here at the Alliance Group Podcast.
Absolutely.
All right, brother.
All right, man.
Listen to this interview and more on the Alliance Group Podcast.